Hello, hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Hey, we'll see how it turns out today. Might be a late group. I think there's just a lot of holidays. Hey, Jonathan.
hey, morning.
Good morning. All right, well, wait a sec. We'll see how it goes. Just telling telling those guys that there's a lot of holidays in Europe this month, so I think there's just a lot of people out. We'll we'll see what the turnout is, and I don't think we have a ton on the agenda anyway, so we can probably rip through it quickly and move on to bigger and better things. Maybe not better, bigger. All right. I'll share the notes real quick. Alrighty. There we go. All right. Welcome everyone. I'm sharing the links one more time. Oh, and one more time. It's people joining still. All right. Yeah, just like always, if you have anything, please feel free to add it to the agenda and we can just kick it off in like a minute or two.
I'll share the links in chat again once you get started, if
Thank
anybody
you.
pops in.
All right. Yep. I guess we can probably get started. So if you don't mind just adding yourself to the list here, if you have any topics, please feel free to add it. And it looks like up first is David.
All right, looks like I drew the short straw. No, just kidding. So, yeah, a few pieces of information about the the Open Future Summit at KubeCon North America. This was something we had tried to set up already for Paris, but then the timeline was just a little too short. This time around, it's going to be a co-located event. So it's really set up in the same way as any other co-located event that usually happen around KubeCon. What are some of the important details? Just a second, and I'll share also my screen. Um, so in reality, from an organizational standpoint, there's not much for us to do. This is going to be all managed by the CNCF. What we can do, so and here's a good moment to share my screen. So yeah, it should be working. So there are a few things you can actually do. Um, you can obviously submit talks to speak at the Open Feature Summit. The deadline is July 14th, so it's about a month and a half out, let's say, a month, 3 weeks. Um, I also shared in the Open Feature channel a link where you can basically apply to become a program committee member. What does this mean? This means that you would then be evaluating talks. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The main advantages of these two things. So if you speak at the Open Feature Summit, you will get a free ticket not only for the co-located events, but for the entire conference. So this is usually quite interesting for everyone. So also for the main KubeCon, let's say, sessions and yeah, sponsor hall, let's say. Um, and with the program committee, it kind of depends on how many talks you evaluate. So usually I would say since this is a co-located event and it will be a half day, you will probably only get a discount on the ticket and not a free ticket. And I guess that's pretty much it. Not sure if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, any
Does that,
any
go ahead,
issues
Jen.
like I guess submitting talks and being on the the approval panel or applying for that?
No, not really. If you, what will happen is then they at least how it used to be, it was with an Excel file. Now it's evolved, so it's with Sessionize. And if you get a session that where you are the speaker, simply either you have to put, I'm not sure if you still even get it. So
Yeah.
it could be that you don't get it at all because I mean now they have a better system. But in the past you would just say like conflict of interest and you wouldn't really evaluate. And the same if it's anyone from your company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do
still
you know
think
how
you
many?
might get it, but it's a pretty easy flow to just mark it as like a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Sorry, I
Do you
think
know how
Thomas, you
many
had a
talks?
question.
Yeah. Do you know how many talks do we have like for this session?
I do not. They're usually the structure. It kind of depends. What we could do is we can look at kind of the co-located events from Paris, and specifically at a half day, and it will be a combination of solo presentations, lightning talks. I think it's something around 5 or 6. I can check if I actually have anything more around that, but they didn't share too much information. It also depends on how many get submitted. So if they get 500 talks, let's say, and they're all 40-minute talks, I guess they'll organize to make as many of those as possible fit. If no one submits a lightning talk, they probably will just skip the lightning talks.
And then what about we are still needing sponsors, right?
Yes, exactly. That is the other part. And again, there it's not really something like not something if anyone here obviously with their company wants to sponsor. Sorry, my computer is continuously trying to log in for some reason, and I keep on getting a pop-up. Um, so there's the whole sponsorship package. Actually, I can share that as well. Uh, just a second. Yeah. So I think this was what, page 24? So there are a few different levels of sponsorship. And these are the different levels. So you have diamond, platinum, gold, and startup. These are for the co-located events. I think the minimum we're technically supposed to reach for the event to be possible is 35,000, if I'm not mistaken, which could be accomplished by any combination of these. Surprisingly, there is no silver. That's I'm not really sure why, but yeah, they kind of just skipped the silver, so it's either diamond, platinum, gold, or startup.
Pete just
Um,
asked, like apparently the form says that it's closed now for the committee.
okay, that's interesting. Because they only gave the link. Well, the day I posted it was the day I got it. So it was open only for a week. Yeah, that's a little rough. Okay, I didn't have any deadlines there, sadly. Yeah,
Can we see if it can
okay.
maybe be extended or something?
I guess we can reach out and check, but let's say it's not only the thing with the committee forms, it's not only for, let's say, this specific event, the form, it's for all of the
Oh, I
co-located
see.
events and the main events. And actually, it wasn't even a specific link for this committee. Um, so in reality, anyone, even if they are no way affiliated with the project, they can apply to be on the committee, which is a bit weird. But sadly, that's the yeah, that's how the CNCF does it to make sure they have, let's say, as much diversity as possible when it comes to yeah, committee speakers and participants.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? So no, okay. I
Yeah, I
think the
guess
main
that's
thing. Oh,
probably
sorry,
more
go
a
ahead.
thing. I was gonna say there's probably more a thing for the governance board and TC, but we'll have to yeah, I guess we'll have to chat about making sure like the sponsorship dollars happen somehow. If that's a requirement. And then yeah, the only other thought was just like maybe yeah, maybe like doing some brainstorming together of like what good talk submissions would be um would be good as well.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, sadly, uh, even if there are like specific choices in what talks there can slash should be, if the committee is made up of people that are, let's say, completely outside of the project and they just evaluate, it could be anything in the end.
Yeah.
So it's
But there's probably like a
it.
good idea to like get people to like join together on talks and like try to
Mm,
like I think we've had better success with stuff like that where you maybe pair like a vendor and a user and stuff like that
yeah,
too.
yeah, absolutely. The other thing that can be done, as you said, trying to see if anyone in the group, and by that I mean the companies want to sponsor. I'll try to reach out internally also in Dynatrace to see if we're going to sponsor this, or if I manage to convince them to sponsor this. Yeah, the other thing could be even just sharing and like through social media
Mhm.
that there is the possibility of this event, and if maybe someone else wants to even sponsor, because
Do
you
you,
never know.
yeah, do you know when they need to know like when they need the sponsorships by? Is there like a date on that?
The sponsorship,
Probably take money whenever.
Well, it's just like, is
Uh,
there a date? Like if we don't raise
yeah.
a certain amount
the
by someday we get turfed.
I think they just don't let us do it
yeah.
again. Is kind of the impression I got. It was like they'll basically give
Okay.
it to you this time, but it's maybe a one-time thing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sadly there is some sort of deadline that I see here, and it's August 16th. Yeah, August 16th. And then there's like additional information. If you are already part of the CNCF, you actually even get a discount. Okay. It's not that much. It's like 3%, but I guess on a couple of thousand that can still make a difference. But
Yeah.
maybe if you go for
Maybe,
diamond.
yeah, maybe if you could have some yes, I guess some clarifying questions on yeah, I guess what happens if we don't reach that total and by that date. Um and then yeah, maybe I'll try to reach out to Chris too and get some more background info on this.
Yeah, there to be honest, I'm not too sure because in the past it was we tried to set up a co-located event, and one of the requirements was that you already had at least a sponsor. So I'm kind of surprised that happened the other way around. I would expect that means that worst case, the CNCF covers the cost because realistically they are the ones organizing the event. So I don't know. I can reach out and ask them. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
so
David, could you
okay.
maybe like have like a list of the different like deadlines or something, just so we're all aware
Yes.
of it? Maybe put
Yeah.
it in Slack or something.
Yeah. I'll add them. Yeah, I'll add them now. It's only two deadlines that are left.
Cool, sounds
Perfect.
good. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions on that before we move on? Cool. Thanks, David. All right, Todd. Looks like you're up next.
All right, this one's kind of quick because it's more or less a question or a problem description. I wanted to bring up to everyone. Basically, the way that we do hooks in OpenFeature, everybody remembers like a hook. I'm on a level set, I guess, to just to make sure everybody remembers what I'm talking about. A hook is basically a way you can add arbitrary behavior around a flag evaluation. So it's how we do a lot of integrations, like OpenTelemetry, for example, metrics and traces. But providers can define them too to allow for side effects. The interesting thing about them is they run with every evaluation, and in our client SDKs, we continued with that paradigm, and which works fine. Even though a lot of providers are doing kind of a bulk evaluation that's not exposed to the to essentially the application author. So there's a bulk evaluation and some caching frequently, not in every case, but in many cases. And then every time a flag is evaluated, a hook is run. This works fine. Generally the thing that we're noticing is in situations where you have these declarative JavaScript frameworks and libraries like Vue, React, Angular. A lot of times there's multiple renders in quick succession, and that can be something that people can optimize for. But I think even if users do take the time to like totally decrease the amount of renders that are happening, or authors take time to do that and make sure that there's never unnecessary renders, you may be using the same feature flag in like 3 different spots in your UI across 3 components, so that essentially for one page load, flag X gets evaluated 5 times. And that's obviously not a big deal performance wise. And in most cases, like I said, we're either evaluating a local rule set or just pulling from cache. That's fine. The side effect with hooks, though, is that hook runs 5 times. And if your goal with hooks is to do, especially in the front end, I think a lot of the goal is impression tracking or telemetry or something like that. It can give the impression that a lot more impressions have taken place than actually have. So that's kind of the problem, and I think it's a little bit unique. Like you're not going to see this on server generally. I think it's really more of a thing that happens with client because of these declarative UI frameworks that and frequently they'll render 4 or 5 times, especially if the app isn't very well optimized. So anyway, all that to say is I think I'd like to think about a solution, and I have a few in my head. One is like creating maybe like a little debounce hook wrapper where you only call the hook once every 4 seconds, just as a for instance. You could wrap other hooks in. Maybe we want something more lower level in the SDKs themselves. I'm not sure, like a caching layer of some kind. I think there's a lot of solutions that vary in their intrusiveness. But yeah, I just wanted to put it out there. Maybe it's not even a problem. Maybe
I
you
think
guys
it's
don't think
not.
it's a problem.
I think if we did anything, it should be outside of it should be kind of like in user land, like in the React wrapper or the whatever else. And honestly, I think it's outside of the scope of kind of the SDK. I think it's not. It would be nice if we in the React thing offered some way to solve this, but I definitely don't think it would be a good idea to kind of complicate. This is just my 2 cents, obviously, but like I don't think it would be a good idea to complicate the SDK just to handle the annoyance of React's kind of rendering paradigm. I also think it would be great to see what do like the React SDKs that are out there from like Split and Knowledge Darkly and Flagsmith and everyone else, see what they do and take some guidance from them. I kind of feel like it's not our problem to solve.
One potential option, Todd, if you think most of the hook usage is from like event tracking side of things, what you could do as part of your events work is like what Last and a lot of other SDKs do. We do a lot of internal aggregation of those kind of like evaluations internally, and then we just send up kind of like an evaluated event on an interval, right? Rather than
Yeah.
calling every single request, right? And so you could do something similar where you, like give people an access to an event, sort of like an evaluation aggregation type thing to sort of solve that use case that maybe it's one of the main uses for hooks, but
I mean, I think the way that if people are doing impression tracking for like for flag evaluations, for example, I think that they're fundamentally you've got to do that kind of integral thing anyway of like kind of aggregating it down to like how many times did this user on this day. Like you don't care. Like you just say, even if it's, you basically just really just care. I, I think you've got the problem regardless. Like if one user is like clicking around a bunch and another user is not, does that mean that you kind of like want to count that more or less? It's kind of not really the problem of the feature flagging system. You just need to do some work with the events to not let that clicky user kind of skew the results.
I think I totally agree with both of you. I think that I only wanted to bring it up just to put out feelers to make sure that we all agreed it was more of a user land concern. That's definitely the opinion that I was leaning towards. Like this is not something that we need to fundamentally reshape anything for. But I was interested on some of the vendor solutions too, like Jonathan was saying. I think uh, Dan Dyla put it really well for me in a way that helped it click. Like I think that um, you can go two ways with metrics and telemetry. One is like send everything, which is really cheap for the client, but costs them networking. But performance wise, it's really easy because you're not doing any aggregation of any kind in the client, and you don't lose any data. Or do some aggregation on the client, which is computationally expensive but saves network um, in some cases. So I think that that's like when we talk about telemetry, like there's kind of both ends of the spectrum and both are valid approaches. When you're a vendor, I think you can get away with kind of being opinionated there. I don't think that we really can. I think we need to support everything essentially for people so that they can do aggregation wherever they want, whether they want to do that in clients or on their back end. Um, so I think it's, yeah, I guess I'm happy to hear you guys kind of agreeing with what I was supposing, that we can come up with some kind of user land recommendations, maybe some small utilities or whatever for this, but that it's not a problem we should tackle fundamentally. I agree with that. So either something maybe in the React SDK or something in the hooks or telemetry in question. Cool. I just wanted to get some takes from vendors. I think I'll put something to this kind of question in Slack and see what people say, because I'd like to hear asynchronously from others as well. But I just want to throw it out there. So thanks.
All right, perfect. Any other questions before we move on? All good? Yeah, cool. All right, so this one is just it's come up a couple times, but I just wanted to bring it back up, and it's maybe partially directed at Thomas, but anyone can of course chime in. But it's basically like, how would we like to talk about OFREP on the website? Like, I think that we could have a certain section there. I don't think we have to go overboard with it necessarily, but there are some, interesting pieces to it. And yeah, just like at the very least, maybe having some kind of filter on like the little ecosystem page so you know what's available. But yeah, just kind of throwing the question out, I guess.
Yeah, my worry about talking a bit too much about off-rep right now is that maybe we are not stable enough to be able to share it everywhere.
Hmm.
That's my feeling here. But I guess we can start with some kind of blog post already to explain what is available and how it works, because I think it could be a good first start to start with that. I don't know what's your feeling here.
Yep, it's more just like to maybe get the ball rolling. It doesn't mean we have to like do a bunch of stuff and make it really like really public and push people in that direction or anything, but just so we have something, or at least consider what that experience could look like.
But maybe
Um,
what we need to do is to define what is a 1.0 or something that is finished to be ready to spread it everywhere, because I think it's like it's evolving iteratively, but we are not in a stable way, and we don't know where to
mm,
stop right now. So maybe we need to define where we want to stop first to be sure that also all vendors that have implemented it can implement everything to this version. Because I think like we recently added configuration endpoints that probably, I don't know if Flagly or DevCycle have implemented it yet, but we don't even call it in providers. So this is also something we need to figure out. But yeah,
mhm.
that's where I think we need to define first where we want to go.
Okay, so that might be something we can cover in the GC like TC meeting tomorrow. And then if
Yep.
there needs to be a longer discussion, then maybe we could do a dedicated sync on what we consider like 1.0 stability, kind of what the goals look like there.
But we can, I think, in terms of communicating about it, maybe first a blog post could be a good first step.
Just to, yeah, talk about, I mean, maybe it's a good call to action is to get involved and test it out and provide feedback and whatnot. So sounds
I
good.
don't want to. I don't want to be too contrarian, but I'm not exactly sure that we should at this point be striving towards a 1.0 or guessing what a 1.0 would look like or trying to bound that. I think we don't know enough about the usage, to be honest. So I would recommend we stay in observation and reaction mode for a while, and see what usage looks like, what adoption looks like, what people want, how people are using it, and then maybe consider what a 1.0 might look like.
Yeah, maybe 1.0 was like a not the right way of saying that, but like not being in alpha mode, but more in beta mode will be probably better. But just being sure that we have something that is usable completely, and after that we can look forward to a 1.0. But just like removing like the in progress part to, to have something that is usable.
Yep, sounds good. Cool, thanks. All right. Perfect. Yeah. So the next one is really just quick. Basically Andrew did this like super stream thing a couple weeks ago. If you haven't seen it, like that guy, well, the whole like team at DevCycle had like some really cool like polish. Like I was pretty blown away by like how well they did creating all the assets and switching around, who's on screen and all that stuff. It was pretty cool. So yeah, check out the stream if you're interested. We definitely had a pretty good number of people watching the live stream and the recordings, and had a ton of vendors on there. It was pretty cool. So I just want to say like, yeah, thanks to Jeff Cycle and Andrew and everything. And yeah, hopefully we can do something again in the future, but it was pretty cool to see.
Some of the questions were really funny. I really liked the how not to use feature flags bit. That was an awesome bit.
Well, and the
And
thing on Facebook was quite interesting too. I was like it makes sense for like load shedding basically, but it was just kind of cool to get that sort of behind the scenes glimpse into how they did that. Yeah, definitely pretty cool.
also kind of interesting that a whole bunch of people misused feature flags for localization.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird and interesting thing
Yeah.
to note.
I've definitely taken that example and putting it in my back pocket for future conversations. It reinforced to me, it was super fun. It reinforced to me how much we would benefit from just kind of building up better relationships with a broader set of vendors. Me and Wyatt have got on our to-do list to kind of like try and form this kind of vendor council, which has been going a little slower than I would like, but it was good motivation to kind of like try and build those relationships more. I realized that like listening to people who, particularly people who are like founders at those companies, they just have anyone who's in like a sales role or a founder role in those companies has so much deep understanding of the weird things that people need to do with feature flags and the weird things that the vendors need to support. And it's like super relevant to informing some of the decisions we make. Like the conversation we just had about the impressions, like it feels like we could bumble around and figure it out ourselves, or we could just go and ask people who have been slogging through it for 8 years. It seems like, oh, I think we'll probably take option 2.
All right. Yep. So it was definitely cool. Hopefully we can leverage that and then keep in contact with everyone. So at any rate, I feel like I had one other thing, but I completely forgot about that section. So I'll hand it off to Jonathan, and then maybe I can think of what I had in mind.
Yeah, I don't have too much directly to share just yet. Just note that yeah, we have a version of the multi-provider, basically, yeah, in PR review internally, and I think Adam's gonna post it uh to yeah as a main PR today. It's definitely like I would say like the scope of it definitely has gotten a bit bigger than probably originally thought, like managing hooks and and the multiple strategy stuff and things like that. Like there's a decent amount of code in there now. But yeah, we'll post it in Slack once we get that going for folks to look at. But yeah, it's definitely it's a substantial thing now. And yeah, I guess for the tool, we've also been looking at the Vercel toolbar stuff. And this kind of made me think a little bit about the OFREP API. Basically how Vercel's toolbar works is that, yeah, you kind of need access to kind of all the underlying metadata of the system. So you kind of need like it's you're not really looking for like the toolbar that shows on the website. What I've learned is like you don't want to show like what the user on the website is evaluated into. What they're actually looking for is like what are all the feature flags that are in your feature flag system, and then being able to turn those on and off sort of through that toolbar. So that might make sense for something for OFREP, but it is kind of like it's not an evaluation, so it might actually need to be a different API. But it's basically like kind of that metadata concept that we were talking a couple months back, of like being able to get access to kind of what are all the feature flags that are in what are their types and things like that. In a feature flag management system, and how do you expose that in a sort of like easy to read API is kind of what they need to make an integration with Vercel make sense. And so I don't see a clear path right now with any of our SDKs or OFREP to be able to do that. So probably need to do something net new for OpenFeature to make that work. So I think they are open to doing an OpenFeature section of the toolbar, but I think we'd need to do some work to get ready for that.
Yeah, actually, I just played around with it, I think on Monday, and yeah, I kind of came to a fairly similar conclusion. It's basically like a base flag definition is what their API is looking for. So it'd be like the variance, a short description, and like the key. Um, I also think looking at it, at least in the code snippets that I could find, they could actually probably benefit from something like the multi-provider or something. Because if you look at their implementation, it's like they basically take like their own in-memory version of it and then like conditionally, like if it's there, it uses that. Otherwise, it calls the vendor, and it's like it's a fairly primitive implementation, and it's like what you would have to actually use like in your real code if you were going to use, this Vercel toolbar, which when it's all wired up, it works really well, but it's yeah, I think from like a developer perspective, it's maybe a bit rougher on the edges right now.
Yeah, it's very primitive. It's very much just like turn this flag on and off. Like
But even just how you reference it, like you'd have to
yeah,
kind of like build your own like SDK wrapper or something almost, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, I think there's a couple opportunities there. It made me immediately think of the multi-provider as soon as I saw like the basic, examples online, which I couldn't find that easily. So if you do talk to the Vercel team, maybe that's some feedback for them. Like they have their docs, but to find examples, I had to go like digging through their repos. So yeah, at any
You know,
rate.
the funny thing is the Vercel person on Twitter said the exact same thing about OpenFeature.
What's that?
That we didn't have very good documentation, and would have been easier to do it if we had good documentation. So everyone's documentation sucks when you're not the person maintaining it.
Well, the documentation's fine. It's just the examples I couldn't find that
and
easy.
it's all
Yeah,
kind of closed source too. It's like half
yeah,
closed
yeah.
source.
It's weird
So
that
it's
it's
like
closed source.
I have a couple gifts and like Dominic like the guy at Vercel like sent me some like private gifts and stuff like that, like how to set it up. But it's like very much not like out in the open, like how to do it. Um and he basically like you just like send him some code and then like he just like copies it into their internal like toolbar code and like ships it. Like that's the release process. So yeah, it's a little yeah, it's not like super like open source or anything or like has doesn't really have an open process to it. So
Okay. Yeah, we may want to follow up too on like the feedback on where the documentation was lacking. Like definitely understand that you can always improve docs, but maybe if we can figure out where the gaps were, we can maybe focus on that. So yeah, if
I
you have specific
I
feedback,
asked
let me know.
him. I
Okay.
asked him, but I didn't get a reply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to action that then, I guess. So all right. Cool. Well, we're through the list. So I will share it one more time. If anyone has anything to add, please feel free. If not, we can go ahead and probably wrap it up. All right. Oh, all good. Yeah. Appreciate everyone's time today. Have a good one.
Thanks,
I'll talk to
folks.
you later.
Thank you.
See you. Have a nice week.
Goodbye.